I'm Jake, I'm 29, and I've been a construction worker for the past 10 years. It's not glamorous, it's hard work, but it pays the bills, and I've made a good life out of it. I've got a decent place, a reliable truck, and a circle of friends who respect me for what I do. But there's always been this tension with my family, especially with my sister, Emma. She's 5 years younger than me, and for most of our lives, I've always felt like I was living in her shadow. She's the golden child, the one everyone praises for being a doctor in the making. She's brilliant, no doubt. But there's always been this sense of superiority she's had over me, as if my job isn't worthy of respect just because it doesn't come with a degree or a white-collar title. Things really started to fall apart around 2 years ago when Emma got into med school. My parents were thrilled, and I was happy for her too. Med school is no joke, and I knew she'd be busting her ass for years to come. What I didn't expect was how quickly she'd start leaning on me. Not emotionally, but financially. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm no stranger to helping out family. I've always tried to be there for them, especially Emma. I'm the kind of guy who won't hesitate to lend a hand, even if it means putting myself out. But things were starting to feel a bit one-sided. At first, it was small things. Hey, can you help with a few $100 for rent this month? The loans are kicking in, and I'm tight. I didn't think twice. Emma's my sister. But soon, it wasn't just rent. Can you help with tuition this semester? I don't want to take out another loan. Then, it was medical supplies for her studies. Every time I turned around, there was another request, and it was getting harder and harder to say no. I'd scrimped and saved to get ahead, but she was burning through my savings like it was nothing. The guilt trip was relentless. I know you've got the money, Jake. You don't really need it, do you? But the thing that really got me was what happened that Christmas. I'd been working a 12-hour shift right before the holiday, exhausted and ready to crash. Emma, as usual, was having a huge gathering at her place. Mom and Dad were there, and the whole extended family was coming over to celebrate. I'd been invited, of course, but I just wasn't feeling it this year. After the year of constant requests for money and all the pressure from her to show up for her, I thought I'd skip it. I sent a text to Emma saying I'd be staying home this year, just to relax. I'm sorry, I'm really wiped. I'll catch up with you all another time. Her response was swift and sharp. You better be there, Jake. It's Christmas. You can't just bail because you're too tired. If you don't come, don't bother showing up ever again. You're just a construction worker anyway. What else do you have to do? I was stunned. I stared at that message for what felt like forever, rereading it over and over. It wasn't the first time Emma had belittled my job, but this was the first time it had really hit me. I've always been proud of the work I do. I've put in so much effort to get to where I am. And here was my own sister, mocking me like that, just because I wasn't a doctor or lawyer or whatever she considered worthy. I didn't reply to her text. I didn't even go to the family dinner. Instead, I stayed home, watching TV, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. It wasn't the first time she'd been rude, but this was different. This was personal. She'd crossed a line. A few days later, I get a call from Mom. Jake, what happened? Emma's upset, and now you're causing drama. Just go to her party. What's the big deal? We're family. I snapped. What's the big deal? The big deal is that Emma thinks I'm nothing more than a tool to pay her bills. I'm not a bank, Mom. I'm her brother. Mom sighed, her voice softening. Jake, it's just, she's under a lot of stress with med school. You've always had a stable job, and she's struggling. She doesn't mean it like that. I couldn't believe it. She does mean it like that, Mom. She doesn't care about me. She only cares about what I can do for her. The next week, I decided I needed some space from it all. I didn't answer any of Emma's calls or texts. I thought about it long and hard, and something inside me snapped. I was done being her ATM, done being her punching bag. She'd always acted like she was better than me because she had a degree and big dreams of becoming a doctor. I was tired of her treating me like garbage. Then came the day she called me, and it was the one that would change everything. It was about 4 months after Christmas. I had been keeping my distance, living my life. I wasn't rude to her. I just wasn't playing her game anymore. But Emma called, and this time, her tone was different. Jake, I really need your help. I'm behind on my rent, and I don't know what I'm going to do. You're my only option. I paused. That old familiar guilt tugged at me, but I wasn't going to fall for it again. Not this time. Not after everything she'd said. I'm sorry, Emma. I can't help you this time. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her trying to process my refusal. Then, she said, her voice trembling. What do you mean? You can't help? You always help. You have to help. I'm going to fail out of med school if I can't pay this rent. Do you want that on your conscience? I took a deep breath. Emma, you've never once thought about what's on my conscience. You've used me for your entire adult life, and I've had enough. You can figure it out on your own. That's when it happened. The final straw. Emma started to scream. You selfish bastard. How could you do this to me? After everything I've done for you, and you can't help me? Fine then. Don't bother showing up for Christmas next year, or any other family event. You're just a construction worker anyway. What do you even have to offer? The words hit harder than I expected. But this time, they didn't have the same effect. Instead of feeling guilty, I felt something else. Something freeing. Like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I was done. Done with her and her entitled attitude. I didn't reply. I hung up the phone, and in that moment, I realized I was done with the constant financial support. I wouldn't pay for her med school anymore. I wouldn't help her with rent, and I wouldn't sit by and watch her treat me like I was beneath her. And that's when things got really interesting. She called me again a week later, but this time, it was different. The desperation in her voice was unmistakable. Jake, please. I didn't mean what I said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You know I didn't mean it. Can we talk? I really need you right now. I'll do anything. Just please help me. I could feel the shift, but it was too late. I wasn't the same person who would bend over backward for her anymore. And that's when the true revenge started. I sat there for a minute, holding my phone, listening to Emma's voice crackle with a mix of guilt and fear. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the compulsion to drop everything and help her. Instead, I felt something empowering. It was like I had finally taken control. She'd spent so long treating me like I was only useful when I could throw money at her problems, and now I was the one who was setting the terms. But I wasn't about to make it easy on her. I wasn't going to just forgive her because she finally realized she was wrong. This wasn't a moment of reconciliation, it was a moment of payback. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let it slide. So, I let her stew for a little while longer. I didn't respond right away. I didn't even pick up when she called again a couple of days later. She texted me, too, pleading, apologizing, and promising she'd make it up to me. Her words were so different from the venom she had spat at me before. I could almost hear the desperation in them, the realization that her usual tactics weren't working anymore. But I didn't care. She had shown me who she truly was, and now, I wasn't just some guy she could manipulate anymore. The next weekend, I went to my parents' house for dinner. They had no idea what had gone down between Emma and me. They just thought it was another one of those sibling squabbles that we'd get over. I wasn't even planning on bringing it up, but as soon as Emma saw me sitting at the dinner table, she froze. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. The thing was, I wasn't the same Jake she used to know. The one who would drop everything to help her out. No, I was a different version now, someone who wasn't afraid to put his foot down. She came over to me, a hesitant smile on her face, trying to act like nothing had happened. Hey, Jake, have you been? She asked, in that overly sweet tone she only used when she was trying to manipulate me. I looked her straight in the eye and didn't even blink. I've been good, Emma. How about you? I said, keeping my voice calm, controlled. Her smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. Good, yeah. Just stressed, you know, med school, everything. Yeah, I know, I said, leaning back in my chair. I know all about stress and the pressure that comes with it. It's tough when you don't know who you can rely on, huh? Her face flushed. I saw the faintest trace of guilt in her eyes. She knew what I was getting at, but she wasn't ready to admit it. Mom, oblivious to the tension, chimed in from the other side of the table. Jake, are you two still fighting? What's going on? You've always been so close. I shook my head, pretending like it was just another normal family argument. We're fine, Mom. I don't know. It's just a lot lately. Emma shot me a quick, angry glance, but I didn't budge. I wasn't about to show her any sympathy. Later, when dinner was winding down, Emma tried to talk to me privately in the kitchen. I could tell she was trying to approach me differently this time, almost like she was walking on eggshells. Jake, can we talk for a second? I'm really sorry for what I said. I know I hurt you, and I shouldn't have. I just stared at her, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. Emma, it's not about what you said. It's about how you've treated me my whole life. You've always seen me as just the guy who helps when things get tough. I'm not your personal bank. She flinched, but I wasn't backing down. I'm sorry, I don't mean to act like that, she said, her voice quieter now. I've been under so much stress with school, and I didn't realize how much I was pushing you. I know you've been there for me, and I appreciate it. I just, I guess I didn't know how to say it. Yeah, well, maybe it's time you figured it out, I said bluntly. Because I'm done playing that game. There was a long silence between us. She looked like she was about to say something, but she hesitated, her words caught in her throat. I knew she was trying to process it all, but I wasn't about to let her backpedal. Not this time. When the conversation ended, she walked away without saying anything else. But I could see the wheels turning in her head. The regret, the guilt, and the realization that I wasn't going to forgive her easily. She had always counted on me to come through for her, but now the tables had turned. The next few weeks were a bit of a whirlwind. Emma tried reaching out to me again, texting me daily, calling me, even showing up at my work once. But I held firm. Each time, I calmly told her I wasn't going to be helping her anymore, and I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me into feeling sorry for her. She tried to manipulate me with sweet words, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I wasn't the guy who would let his family walk all over him. The more she begged, the more I realized how deep her entitlement ran, and that just made me more resolute in my decision to stop giving her anything. One day, she called me again. This time, her voice was desperate, but it wasn't the pleading that got to me. It was the tone, the genuine panic in her voice. Jake, I can't do this. I'm going to fail. I've lost everything. I can't afford rent, and if I don't pay it, I'll get kicked out. I don't know where else to turn. Please, please help me. I didn't say anything at first. I just let her talk, let the silence between us grow heavy. And then, when she finally paused to catch her breath, I spoke. You know, Emma, the truth is, I think you need to learn something. You need to learn what it's like to face the consequences of your actions. You can't keep running to me every time things get tough. There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, I could hear the tears in her voice. I get it. I've been awful. Please, Jake, I know I've messed up, but I don't know what to do without your help. And for the first time, I felt no sympathy. None. Just a cold sense of finality. You'll figure it out, I said, and hung up. The next day, I went online and made a public post in our family group chat. I detailed everything, every penny I had lent her, every time she'd taken advantage of me, and how much I had done for her. I wasn't doing it to shame her, but to make sure everyone knew the truth. That's when Emma's world really started to unravel. But that was only the beginning. The moment I hit send on that message, I knew it would stir things up. I didn't expect it to escalate this quickly, though. My phone buzzed almost immediately with notifications, but it wasn't the usual supportive family comments I was used to seeing. It was a string of messages from Emma, calling me selfish, heartless, and ungrateful for everything she had done for me in the past. I almost laughed. She had a remarkable ability to twist things to fit her narrative. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat back and watched the fallout unfold. Mom called first, and I could hear the panic in her voice. Jake, what's going on? Why did you post that? You know your sister is already under a lot of pressure with med school. I know, Mom, but she's been using me as a safety net for years, and I'm done. I'm not just going to keep enabling her, especially when she treats me like I'm some kind of ATM. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. But she's your sister, Mom said, her voice small, almost pleading. I know she's my sister, but that doesn't give her the right to treat me like this, I replied. I'm not going to be her fall guy anymore. Mom sighed deeply. You're making a big mistake, Jake. You're hurting her. She's been through so much. I didn't know what to say. All I could think about was the way Emma had treated me, the countless times she'd only come around when she needed something, never just to be a sister. And honestly, I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Then came Dad. His call was just as tense, but he took a different approach. He was calm, methodical, trying to reason with me. Jake, I get that you're upset, but don't you think you're going too far? This isn't how we handle things in this family. I bit back a sarcastic laugh. So, what? I should just keep being her ATM, keep bailing her out when she's too busy to figure things out on her own. Family is about support. You've always been there for each other. You can't just turn your back on her like this, Dad insisted. I'm not turning my back on her, Dad. I'm just not going to keep enabling her behavior. She needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. But my parents weren't the only ones reaching out. I started getting messages from some of my extended family, my aunts, uncles, and cousins questioning me, telling me I was wrong, that I was being harsh. Some even said Emma was under too much stress with med school, that she had every right to ask for help. I couldn't believe it. All these people who had never had to deal with the way Emma treated me were suddenly trying to paint me as the villain. It was like no one understood what it felt like to always be the one giving without ever getting anything in return. Then came Emma's response. It was a text, a long one, full of guilt and anger, mixed with a desperate plea for me to change my mind. She said she didn't know how she'd manage without me, that her entire future was on the line. She begged for my forgiveness, promising that things would be different this time. She even apologized for the things she said to me before, things that stung more than I had let on. I read her message, letting her words sink in. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the old Jake, the one who would have immediately caved, who would have reached out to offer a hand, who would have convinced himself that family always came first. But not this time. This time, I felt nothing but resolve. The memories of her selfishness, the way she had used me time and time again, pushed away any trace of sympathy. And that was when I realized something. For years, I had been holding myself back, convincing myself that I couldn't be the bad guy. But maybe it wasn't about being the bad guy or the good guy. Maybe it was about finally standing up for myself, about finally letting go of the guilt I had carried for so long. I put my phone down, not even bothering to respond. I had already made up my mind. Emma wasn't getting another penny out of me. She wasn't going to be able to manipulate me into coming back and saving her. She needed to learn what it felt like to take responsibility for her own life. A few days passed without any word from her. But then, the phone call I had been expecting came. It was late in the evening, and I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through some random stuff on my phone when I saw her name pop up on the screen. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, strained. Jake. I get it now. I was awful to you, and I'm so sorry. But please, please don't leave me out here alone. I can't do this. I don't know who else to turn to. I'm failing everything, and I just need one more chance. Please. The words felt like a weight, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I had heard this same sob story a dozen times before, and I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. Still, I let the voicemail sit there for a while, knowing it wasn't going to change anything. Then, the following morning, something strange happened. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer it, thinking it was just another telemarketer, but I decided to pick up. Hello. Jake, it's Dr. Hughes from the med school, came the voice on the other end. I froze. What's going on? I'm afraid Emma has been struggling a lot lately. She's been falling behind, and we're concerned about her progress. We were wondering if you might consider helping her out, financially, just to keep her on track. She's at risk of losing her spot in the program, and without your support, I don't know if she'll make it. I felt a sudden rush of frustration, but I kept my voice even. I'm not helping her anymore. I've already told her that. Well, I wanted to be transparent with you, Dr. Hughes said. Emma's told us that you've always been a significant support system for her. And frankly, we're worried she might not be able to keep up if she doesn't get the help she needs. There it was. The classic guilt trip. The poor, struggling student narrative, framed in a way that tried to make me feel responsible for her failures. I stood up, pacing the room. I'm sorry, but I'm not her backup anymore. She needs to figure it out. I'm done. I hung up, and I felt that familiar sense of finality wash over me. But this time, it felt different. It wasn't the bitter feeling of anger that used to consume me when I'd had enough of Emma. It was something more like relief. But then, a few days later, I got another call. This time, it wasn't from Emma. It was from a lawyer. I could barely believe it when I saw the name of the law firm on the caller ID. For a second, I almost thought I'd made a mistake. Maybe it was some sort of scam, or maybe someone was messing with me. But no, I answered the call. Hello, this is Jake. Mr. Thompson, I'm calling on behalf of Emma, the lawyer said, his voice polite but professional. She's instructed me to reach out regarding a financial agreement she believes you owe her. I blinked, almost laughing. What? What are you talking about? She claims that you had verbally agreed to continue helping her with tuition payments and other financial support for her medical school, and now that you've stopped, she feels that you're breaching an understanding she says you both had. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? She's going to try to sue me over this. The lawyer's voice remained calm, but there was a slight edge, like he was trying to keep control of the situation. Well, there are other legal options she could pursue, but before we go down that route, I wanted to ensure that we made an attempt to resolve this amicably. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. I was in total shock. How far was Emma willing to go? I could feel the weight of the situation hanging over me, but instead of caving, something inside me snapped. No, I said firmly. I'm done. I'm not going to fund her lifestyle anymore, and I'm certainly not going to let her manipulate me with the law. She's been using me for years. If she wants to try and sue me, let her. But she won't get a cent. You can tell her that. There was a brief pause on the other end, then the lawyer replied, I understand. But you should be aware, this could escalate. I strongly advise you to reconsider. I had a lot of options in that moment. I could have gone to court and fought it out. I could have panicked and started apologizing. But I didn't. I stayed calm. I'll take my chances, I said. And you can let Emma know. If she wants to keep pushing me, she'll only make things worse for herself. I hung up. For the next few days, I was left in peace. No calls, no messages, nothing. I figured maybe Emma realized that she wasn't going to scare me into paying her way anymore. Then, almost a week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Emma. Inside, there was a short note written in her unmistakable handwriting. Jake, I was wrong. I've been selfish, and I've taken you for granted. I thought I could manipulate you into helping me, but I realize now I've burned every bridge I had with you. I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect anything from you anymore. I need to fix this on my own, but I don't want to lose my brother. I stared at the letter for a while, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to forgive her, wanted to just sweep everything under the rug and pretend it hadn't happened. But the other part of me, the part that had suffered through years of her taking advantage of me, felt something closer to satisfaction. She was finally owning up to what she had done, but it was too little, too late. I threw the letter in the trash. A few months passed, and Emma somehow managed to make it through med school. I didn't hear much from her, and honestly, I didn't care to. She seemed to be on the right track now, but it wasn't because of me. She had to figure things out on her own, and for the first time, I felt proud of her for doing so. But the best part of all this? I was free. Free from the guilt, free from the weight of constantly having to prop her up, free from the expectations that I would always be her safety net. I wasn't her bank anymore, and I wasn't going to be her emotional punching bag. Family wasn't supposed to be about using each other. It was about supporting each other when it counted, not just when it was convenient. And Emma, for all her flaws, was finally learning that. The calls stopped coming. The drama faded. And for the first time in years, I could breathe easy, knowing that I wasn't her doormat anymore. I never got another letter, and I never had to help her again. And I was okay with that.